In the early hours of May 16th, 2025, 10 inmates vanished from the Orleans Parish Justice Center without a trace. No alarms were triggered. No guards reported disturbances. It wasn't until the morning head count, nearly 8 hours later, that jail officials realized what had happened. By then, the fugitives had already crossed fences, scaled barriers, and disappeared into sprawl of New Orleans. The facility, designed to hold over 1,400 inmates, had long been flagged for security issues, faulty locks, blind surveillance spots, and chronic understaffing. But no one expected a breach of this magnitude. The escape was not the work of one man or a single moment of negligence. It was methodical, calculated, exploited from the inside. The escape route? A utility crawl space hidden behind a toilet, used to bypass locked corridors and surveillance dead zones. The destination? An unsecured loading dock, steps away from freedom. During their escape from the Orleans Parish Justice Center on May 16th, 2025, the inmates left behind taunting graffiti messages. Above the hole behind the removed toilet, they wrote, "To easy LOL, we innocent." Among the escapees were men facing charges for murder, rape, armed robbery, and attempted homicide. Several were already convicted. Some were awaiting trial. One had pending warrants in another parish. None were low risk.
An urgent manhunt is still underway in the South after several inmates escaped from a Louisiana jail. The Jailbreak shows the inmates running out of the jail and jumping down off a ledge. You see it right there. 7 of the 10 fugitives have been able to stay ahead of that manhunt for 4 days. Now, the Louisiana governor says there is no excuse for the failure at the jail that allowed violent criminals on the streets. ABC's Faith Abube has the latest.
Authorities launched a statewide manhunt with the FBI and U.S. Marshals. Within 48 hours, 3 were captured. 7 remain at large. This is not just a story about a jailbreak. It is a timeline of failure, of protocols ignored, systems overlooked, and dangers underestimated. And it's far from over. Who escaped? How did they coordinate it? Who helped them, if anyone? And most importantly, where are they now? What happened inside the walls of the New Orleans jail is no longer just a local issue. It's a national alarm. And now the hunt begins. Stay with us as we investigate how 10 men walked out one of the most secure facilities in Louisiana and how the system let it happen. If you enjoy real crime stories that uncover the truth, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us share real cases, spread awareness, and give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now let's begin. In the early hours of May 16th, 2025, 10 inmates escaped from the Orleans Parish Justice Center in New Orleans. This incident exposed major flaws in the facility structure, security protocols, and overall operations. Built in 2015, the jail was designed to hold approximately 1,438 inmates. At the time of the escape, it housed around 1,300 individuals. While the capacity had not yet been exceeded, the facility was operating under severe strain due to multiple internal failures. The Orleans Parish Justice Center was originally intended to replace the older jail complex with a more modern, secure system. However, within a decade, it has been plagued by chronic issues that undermine its security and reliability. Among the most significant problems were chronic understaffing, outdated and faulty infrastructure, inoperable surveillance systems, and aging mechanical components. These systemic weaknesses contributed directly to the jailbreak. The Justice Center opened in 2015 as a response to demands for a safer and more efficient jail environment in Orleans Parish. Despite its modern origins, the facility quickly deteriorated. With a maximum capacity of roughly 1,438 inmates, it held about 1,300 at the time of the escape, suggesting that overcrowding wasn't the primary issue. Instead, internal infrastructure and staffing presented the greatest vulnerabilities. Over the years, staffing shortages became a persistent issue. By May 2025, the jail was functioning with less than 60% of the required personnel. This lack of manpower affected routine operations, such as cell checks, surveillance monitoring, and maintenance responses. The staff on duty during the escape night were unable to detect the activities that led the inmates' exit in real time, largely because they were overwhelmed and undermanned. Several critical security failures paved the way for the escape. Chief among these was a widespread issue of non-functioning or defective cell locks. Multiple reports from prior months had highlighted how some locks could be opened without a key. This gave certain inmates the freedom to leave their cells at will during the night, creating opportunities to plan and execute escapes without immediate detection. Another overlooked flaw involved the jail's toilets. In several cases, toilets have been damaged or removed entirely, either by inmates or due to delayed maintenance. These gaps gave access to behind-the-wall utility spaces. Inmates familiar with the layout exploited this by using a removed toilet area as an entry point into maintenance corridors. From there, they navigated through crawl spaces until they reached less secured areas of the building. Surveillance inside the jail was largely non-functional at the time. Many cameras were outdated or broken, and monitoring was inconsistent due to the staff shortage. There was no 24/7 active surveillance of inmate cells. This allowed escapees to act undetected for several hours. The loading dock, where the inmates eventually emerged, was another weak point. The exit used by the escapees led to a fenced exterior zone. However, the fencing was reportedly compromised, and the perimeter wall had multiple vulnerable spots. The escape route ultimately led across Interstate 10, giving the inmates a head start of several hours before the facility staff noticed their absence during a routine morning head count. On the evening of May 15, 2025, a group of inmates at the Orleans Parish Justice Center began the first stages of a carefully planned jailbreak. Over several hours, they systematically tampered with their cell toilets and security locks. This action was not a spontaneous act of desperation, but rather a calculated exploitation of known vulnerabilities within the facility's infrastructure. The jail, which houses approximately 1,300 inmates, has been reported to suffer from ongoing maintenance issues, including faulty locks and aging plumbing systems. At the same time, the facility's surveillance cameras were either not monitored effectively or malfunctioning. This lack of oversight created an environment in which the inmates could operate undetected. Authorities later confirmed that at least 2 inmates had previously taken advantage of these security lapses to move around within the jail, indicating that the vulnerabilities had been exploited before but were not sufficiently addressed. Just after midnight on May 16, 2025, precisely at 12:23 a.m., the inmates executed their escape plan. Using a hole behind a removed toilet, they accessed a behind-the-wall maintenance space, which is normally inaccessible to prisoners. This small opening allowed them to enter utility corridors hidden from routine supervision. From these corridors, the inmates proceeded to reach the loading dock area of the facility. This location, meant for deliveries and staff access, presented another weak point in the jail security. The inmates exited the loading dock through a breach in the fencing, a security flaw that had not been adequately repaired or guarded. Once outside the fenced area, the inmates climbed the perimeter wall of the jail and fled across the adjacent Interstate 10. This major highway borders the jail complex and represents a significant obstacle for escapees. Yet the inmates managed to cross it undeterred. The timing of the escape, during the early morning hours, minimized the chances of immediate detection. The jailbreak went unnoticed until routine morning head count at 8:30 a.m., over 8 hours later. At that time, jail staff discovered the missing inmates and promptly alerted the New Orleans Police Department, NOPD, and state officials. By this point, the escapees had gained a substantial head start, allowing them time to disperse and evade initial law enforcement efforts.
An urgent manhunt is still underway in the South after several inmates escaped from a Louisiana jail. The jailbreak shows the inmates running out of the jail and jumping down off a ledge. You see it right there. 7 of the 10 fugitives have been able to stay ahead of that manhunt for 4 days. Now, the Louisiana governor says there is no excuse for the failure at the jail that allowed violent criminals on the streets. ABC's Faith Abube has the latest.
A high-stakes manhunt underway for 7 inmates considered armed and dangerous, caught on this surveillance video breaking out of a New Orleans jail.
These are violent criminals, and they escaped.
Authorities say a total of 10 inmates busted out of the Orleans Parish facility in the early hours of Friday, taking advantage of defective locks on multiple jail cells. Stunning photos showing the getaway path, a hole behind the toilet with this taunting message, "Too easy, LOL."
The failure in the jail system should never have happened.
The inmates were on the run for at least 7 hours before jail employees realized they were gone, officials taking even longer to notify the public. One of the escaped inmates captured right here in the French Quarter, the busiest and most important tourist hub here in New Orleans. It's only about 2 miles from that jail. Only 3 of the 10 fugitives have been recaptured. An internal investigation underway at the jail after the sheriff said her own employees may have helped in the stunning jailbreak.
We think this was intentional. There is much more than meets the eye.
And again, Stephanie, we're now in the 4th day of this investigation with 7 fugitive inmates on the run right now. The governor blasting the failures at this jail for allowing those violent criminals on the street. In the meantime, he says he wants a full state audit of the facility. Authorities also are trying to incentivize more public help. They're boosting the bounty on each of those inmates' heads to $20,000 each. Stephanie.
Faith Abube for us in New Orleans. Thanks so much.
The failure to detect the escape earlier raises questions about the jail's overnight monitoring protocols. The facility was operating with approximately 60% of the required staff, a significant shortfall that likely contributed to the delayed discovery. The combination of understaffing and non-functional surveillance cameras created an environment where such a breach could occur without immediate detection. Following the discovery, law enforcement agencies launched a multi-agency manhunt. The FBI, U.S. Marshals Service, state police, and local officers coordinated efforts to track down the 10 escapees. The escapees face various charges, including murder, attempted murder, armed robbery, domestic abuse, and weapons violations, making their recapture priority for public safety officials. Investigations into the jailbreak identified multiple systemic failures. Maintenance reports prior to the incident documented broken locks and unsecured areas, but these issues were not promptly addressed. The removal or loosening of a toilet that created the initial access point had been noted, yet no corrective action was taken to secure it. In response to the jailbreak, Orleans Parish authorities suspended 3 jail employees pending investigation. The potential for internal assistance or negligence is under review. Additionally, Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry ordered a full audit of the Orleans Parish Justice Center to assess the security protocols and staffing adequacy. The escape also highlighted broader concerns about jail overcrowding and resource allocation. With the facility housing more inmates than its optimal capacity and facing a staffing crisis, the risk of security breaches is increased. The jailbreak prompted renewed discussions about the need for infrastructure investment and reform within the correctional system. At present, 3 of the escapees have been apprehended. The remaining 7 are still at large, with authorities continuing their efforts to locate and detain them. Rewards have been offered for information leading to their capture. The ongoing manhunt remains a high priority for local and federal law enforcement agencies. This incident serves as a case study in the consequences of deferred maintenance, inadequate staffing, and insufficient surveillance in correctional facilities. The escape success was enabled by a combination of physical security failures and operational shortcomings. The delayed discovery of the jailbreak allowed the escapees to gain critical time to evade capture, complicating recovery efforts. Here are detailed profiles of the 10 inmates involved in the escape, including their ages, charges, and current status. Antoine Massey, 23, at large. Massey faces charges including domestic abuse and car theft. He is also wanted for kidnapping and rape in St. Tammany Parish. Authorities consider him armed and dangerous. Corey Boyd, 21, at large. Boyd was convicted of second-degree murder. His escape poses a significant risk due to the violent nature of his crimes. Derek Groves, 28, at large. Groves is charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. His criminal history marks him as a high priority for recapture. Kenan Dennis, 19, captured. Dennis was arrested on charges of armed robbery and illegal weapons possession. He was one of the 3 escapees apprehended by law enforcement shortly after the breakout. Gary Price, 30s, at large. Price faces charges including attempted first-degree murder, domestic abuse, battery, and criminal damage. He remains at large and is considered dangerous. Jermaine Donald, 32, at large. Donald's charges include second-degree murder, aggravated battery, and weapons violations. His escape adds the severity of the incident. Kendall Miles, 30, captured. Miles was arrested for smuggling contraband and concealing a weapon within the jail. Authorities recaptured him quickly after the escape. Lenton Van Buren, 25, at large. Van Buren was convicted of second-degree murder. He remains on the run as law enforcement continues search efforts. Leo Tate, 33, at large. Tate faces second-degree murder charges. He is one of the 7 inmates still evading capture. Robert Moody, 36, captured. Moody was charged with obstruction of justice and attempted battery. He was also among those recaptured shortly after the escape. Of the 10 escapees, 3, Kenan Dennis, Kendall Miles, and Robert Moody, have been recaptured. The remaining 7 fugitives are still at large. Local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and U.S. Marshal Service, have joined the manhunt. Multiple checkpoints have been established along major highways, and public alerts have been issued. On May 16, 2025, the escape of 10 inmates from the Orleans Parish Justice Center in New Orleans set off a citywide response marked by urgency and heightened security measures. By the time the breakout was discovered during a routine morning head count, 7 of the escapees, convicted or accused of violent crimes, including second-degree murder, attempted murder, and armed robbery, were still at large. This sparked immediate concern among law enforcement and the public due to the dangerous nature of the fugitives. The presence of multiple violent offenders outside secure custody prompted local authorities to issue warnings to schools, businesses, and residents throughout the city and surrounding areas. Educational institutions were advised to increase supervision and review safety protocols to protect students and staff. Businesses were similarly urged to exercise caution and report any suspicious activities. Community vigilance became a key component of the initial response as law enforcement sought to prevent further incidents linked to the escapees. In an effort to aid in the swift capture of the fugitives, the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office distributed flyers and mugshots of the escapees, both in physical form around the city and extensively through social media platforms. These material provided identifying information and descriptions of the individuals, their charges, and known last locations. The Sheriff's Office encouraged residents to report sightings immediately to authorities and stressed that the escapees should be considered armed and dangerous. Federal law enforcement agencies swiftly joined the manhunt. The FBI and U.S. Marshal Service were deployed to support local police with resources and tactical expertise. These federal agencies brought specialized tracking teams and intelligence capabilities to enhance the search. Coordination among multiple agencies was established to cover wider geographic areas, set up roadblocks, and conduct interviews that could lead to the recapture of the escapees. The breakout led to swift reactions from political leaders and oversight bodies tasked with public safety and criminal justice administration. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry publicly condemned the jailbreak, characterizing it as a total breakdown of public safety. He attributed the incident to systemic failures within the correctional facility and demanded a comprehensive investigation into how the security breach occurred. Governor Landry called for an immediate audit of the Orleans Parish Justice Center's operational procedures, staffing levels, and maintenance records to identify lapses and assign accountability. In addition to calling for an internal review, Landry announced financial incentives to expedite the recapture of escapees. A reward of $20,000 was offered for information leading directly to the apprehension of each fugitive. This measure was intended to motivate public cooperation and accelerate law enforcement efforts. Governor Landry emphasized the necessity for structural reforms in the state's jail system. He stressed that preventing similar incidents required not only accountability for this escape, but also long-term investments in upgrading facilities and addressing staffing shortages. The Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office became the focus of intense scrutiny following the incident. 3 jail employees were suspended pending an internal investigation to determine whether any negligence or collusion contributed to the escape. Internal affairs units launched probes to assess whether employees failed to follow protocols or deliberately assisted the inmates. Preliminary findings revealed multiple security vulnerabilities, including malfunctioning door locks, unmonitored surveillance systems, and understaffing during the critical overnight shift when the escape occurred. These deficiencies were cited as major factors enabling the inmates to exploit gaps in facilities' defenses. The incident placed significant pressure on the sheriff's office to modernize its infrastructure and improve operational standards. Critics highlighted that the jail was operating at reduced staffing levels, around 60% of the recommended complement, which compromised the ability to monitor inmates effectively and respond to emergencies. In response, the sheriff's office pledged cooperation with investigators and committed to implementing immediate corrective actions. These included repairing or replacing faulty locks, enhancing video monitoring capabilities, and increasing staffing levels. Long-term plans for comprehensive facility upgrades were also announced to ensure compliance with safety regulations and restore public trust. This overview covers the essential developments following the Orleans Parish Jail escape, focusing on immediate security measures, public warnings, and multi-agency manhunt. It also details the political accountability efforts and administrative changes prompted by the incident. Following the unprecedented escape of 10 inmates from the Orleans Parish Justice Center on May 16, 2025, law enforcement agencies have intensified efforts to apprehend the fugitives. To date, 3 of the escapees, Kendall Miles, Kenan Dennis, and Robert Moody, have been successfully recaptured. These arrests represent approximately 30% of the total escapees and have been a result of coordinated efforts involving extensive surveillance, intelligence gathering, and interagency collaboration. The remaining 7 escapees continue to evade capture. Law enforcement agencies have mobilized a task force comprising more than 200 officers from local police departments, state law enforcement, and federal agencies, including the FBI and U.S. Marshal Service. This multi-jurisdictional task force has deployed a wide range of investigative techniques aimed at tracking and capturing the fugitives. Officers are employing advanced surveillance technologies, including license plate readers, closed-circuit camera footage, and geographic information systems, GIS, to analyze movement patterns. Field agents are conducting interviews with family members, associates, and known affiliates of the escapees to identify potential hideouts and supply networks. Additionally, street-level informants are being engaged to provide real-time intelligence on sightings and activities of the fugitives. A series of checkpoints and roadblocks have been established strategically near major highways, interstate exits, and train stations to intercept any attempts by the escapees to travel outside the immediate region. These checkpoints involve thorough vehicle inspections and verification of passenger identities. Furthermore, transportation hubs such as bus terminals and airports have increased security screening and coordination with law enforcement to prevent the fugitives from leaving the area. The recapture efforts remain ongoing and are expected to continue until all escapees are apprehended. The coordination between agencies and deployment of resources represents one of the most significant law enforcement responses to a jail escape in recent history. The jailbreak at the Orleans Parish Justice Center has brought renewed national attention to the state of the American jail and prison infrastructure. The escape has exposed critical vulnerabilities in jail security systems, raising questions about maintenance, staffing, and oversight. Notably, investigations revealed that faulty locks and structural weaknesses facilitated the escape, highlighting the consequences of deferred maintenance and resource constraints faced by correctional facilities. This incident has intensified ongoing debates surrounding the policies of cash bail and pretrial detention. Critics argue that overcrowding in jails is partly driven by the incarceration of individuals awaiting trial who have not been convicted of crime, often due to inability to post bail. This overcrowding exacerbates facility maintenance problems and strains staffing resources, contributing to lapses in security. The escape has also amplified calls for comprehensive jail reform, focusing on modernization of physical infrastructure, enhanced staffing levels, and improved oversight mechanisms. Lawmakers and policymakers are under increased pressure to allocate funding and establish regulations that address these systemic issues. Additionally, there are potential legal ramifications for the Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office and related entities. Victims of crimes committed by the escapees before their incarceration may seek civil litigation against the jail and its administration for negligence, citing the escape as a failure to contain dangerous individuals. These lawsuits could result in significant financial and reputational consequences for the local government. The Orleans Parish Jail escape has underscored deep flaws within the correctional system infrastructure. The breach has demonstrated how physical security weaknesses, coupled with operational challenges such as understaffing, can facilitate the escape of multiple high-risk inmates. Despite the ongoing manhunt and the partial recapture of fugitives, 7 dangerous individuals remain at large, posing an ongoing risk to public safety. Law enforcement agencies continue to emphasize public vigilance and cooperation in providing information related to the fugitives' whereabouts. Authorities maintain that the escapees are considered armed and dangerous, and citizens are urged to report any suspicious activity immediately. The incident has set a precedent that may drive future reforms in jail management and policy. However, until all escapees are apprehended and structural improvements are implemented, vulnerabilities within the system remain exposed. The manhunt for the remaining fugitives continues to be a priority for law enforcement and public safety officials. This jailbreak has exposed serious issues in our correctional system and put our community on high alert. What do you think needs to be done to prevent incidents like this in the future? Should there be harsher penalties for those responsible for jail security failures? Or is it time to rethink how we handle incarceration and jail overcrowding altogether? Drop your thoughts and suggestions in the comments below. Your opinion matters. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more important updates like this, and share this video to keep your friends and family informed. Stay alert, stay informed, and let's demand accountability and change together.